All right, folks, welcome once again, everybody, to Irish Sports Daily Power Hour. I'm your host, Mike Frank, here with Jamie Uyeyama. We have Greg Clemong producing the show. He'll pop on now and again with some comments and things like that. Before we get going, I wanted to mention once again, it's a great time to sign up for Irish Sports Daily. Go to the front page of Irish Sports Daily. Click on the premium section. You can sign up today with a lot going on with the portal, coaching changes, recruiting. There's lots of stuff going on. It's crazy because I remember way back when this would be the dead time. There wouldn't be anything going on, but because recruiting is escalated so fast, it's one of these things where a lot of the recruiting happens now, happens now all the way till June, and then it's more dead in the fall. So a lot going on with recruiting. Also, I wanted to mention our sponsor, which is ESQ Clothing, founded by ND alum Ge Wang and Chicago's go-to for best custom suits, shirts, and sport coats. As Notre Dame reloads for the season, now's the time to refresh your wardrobe and add the perfect suit, sport coat, tuxedo, or casual jacket for fall. ESQ master tailors combine next-level craftsmanship with the finest fabrics to deliver a fit that's built just for you. Now with showrooms both downtown Chicago and in Winnetka, book your custom fitting and step into confidence with Chicago's finest. Mention ISD at your appointment. Receive 10% off your entire purchase. Once again, that's esqclothing.com. Also, if you want to be a sponsor of this site, you can reach out to me and email me at mikefrank18@gmail.com. Once again, mikefrank18@gmail.com. We've had lots of success with our sponsors. I wanted to mention thanks to all of our listeners who bought into the goods candies. We sold so many of those, they had to shut down the thing because we had so much of that going. So that's a good thing. And so this stuff does definitely work for people, especially for those types of things. So if you want to reach out to us and advertise or want to find out about details, you can reach me at mikefrank18@gmail.com. All right, Yama, let's go with football in today's world. And one of Notre Dame's biggest rivals lost their head coach in Sharon Moore. Craziness that goes around there. I just don't understand why these guys do this to themselves. But apparently, I don't. Maybe I don't have this problem because I'm just not good looking. I don't know, but this kind of stuff never comes up to me. I never have these types of problems. So, or rich. So that's probably two of the reasons. And even though I do play music, apparently that doesn't get me any chicks either. So I don't have these problems I have to worry about. But Jamie, I think it's interesting because I was just thinking about this, and I know a lot of fans don't want to hear about this, but someday Marcus Freeman is going to be gone. And, the way this is going, if he continues to do as well as he does, they're in the playoffs and things like that, it's going to be difficult. I feel bad for these coaches, these schools trying to hire a coach right now because all the good ones are gone. If you fire your guy in September or October, you get a head start on everybody. If you have any sort of success, then by the time the cycle turns around, especially if one of your guys goes to the NFL, which a lot of people think is the likely destination of Marcus Freeman at some point, is the NFL. A lot of people think if it's college, he'll be at Notre Dame because he enjoys it. But like a lot of coaches, they like to experiment and look into the NFL and that type of thing. Please don't think that I'm hinting towards anything like that because that's not the case. But I just find it interesting that so many of these schools are kind of struggling. In Michigan, when you look, a lot of people thought DeBoer from Alabama might be interested. He drops out of it, and says, no, I'm good here. So then you're down to a guy like Eli Drinkowitz, and then I'm looking at this situation, or maybe a guy like Tom Rees, who a lot of people have thrown his name out there and some other names. And when I think back to the situation with Brian Kelly, Notre Dame was lucky. They were just pure lucky that they had the dude on the staff already. And what's the odds of that happening? Especially somebody as special as Marcus Freeman. So that's something that, nobody wants to think about, but it's going to be hard to hire a good quality coach when he's gone. It just is, because as we found out, there's hardly any that are out there. And by the time, if it is an NFL gig, by the time he decides, who's going to be left? And so It's just something I've been thinking about this weekend. When Michigan fired theirs and the position that they're in, it's just going to be a very difficult situation and not one that a lot of people think about. So hopefully he's very happy with his situation at Notre Dame and sticks around. But a lot of teams are going to find themselves in this predicament, and someday it's going to be Notre Dame too. So thoughts there?
Well, Michigan is obviously in a brutal spot right now. Of the spot of their own making. They had there's a million red flags with everything that was going on there to not promote Sherrone Moore. But that was the thing, is like, everyone has looked at Marcus Freeman and what a success story it's been for Notre Dame. That was one of those things where obviously people liked Marcus and they respected him and thought, hey, he's got a chance to be a pretty good head coach one day. No one knew that it was going to be, as successful as it has been so far. And also too, obviously it took time. It was like he's gotten better, and there's been a learning process through that too. And sometimes you go and you promote the next guy, and that was the thing that they wanted to do to keep continuity from the previous staff. And it obviously, even if you look at, like, forget about all the off the field stuff, just look at the on the field, like, I don't think they were very happy with on the field of how things went. And
and I think that's why he was fired more than anything.
Oh, 100%.
They seem to be trying to clear this thing up, and keep it.
They were keeping it under wrap.
Yeah. Everybody knew about it,
Yeah.
So they saw it as an opportunity to get rid of dead weight. I believe that's what happened. But again, I don't know the ins and outs of it. But
well,
go ahead.
It is also one of these things too, where you look at Penn State and they fired, James Franklin about as early as you could fire a coach, and they didn't have anybody. The whole point was like, so you could get a class going together. They didn't have anything. They didn't have anything planned. Nothing worked out for them. It ended up being a horrible, situation for them. Right. So I think with the calendar in college football, there's never a good time to, have to hire a new coach. There just really isn't. Because you fire your coach. Then if you don't have a coach that you can bring on before the beginning of December, then you're in a bad spot, right? You're going to be in a bad spot. So, I think like there's just going to be a situation like, hopefully after, Marcus Freeman wins a national championship or whatever, but maybe one day he'll go to the NFL, and it'll just have to be, some of it's got to be luck that you just kind of have the right person there. And I don't think there's a person right now that you'd look at on staff and say, hey, that guy's the next guy right now.
Yeah.
But you know what? You wouldn't have said that about, like, with Brian Kelly, and then all of a sudden Marcus Freeman was there for a year, and then you're like, oh, well, he could be the next guy. And I'm sure there's people at that time that were probably thinking, oh, if only Clark Lee had stuck around for another year or something like that, right? Like,
sure.
Right. So there's all these kind of different situations. You never know. And as much as, someone might say like, well, hey, Clark Lee would be a great hire if something came up. No one knows if that guy's going to stay here or there, or who's going to stay, or if they're going to sign an extension, or, like look at Matt Rule and all the things that's gone on with Nebraska. It's one of those things that's so uncertain. And I don't know if there's ever going to be a good time to need a coach in college football, in today's college football. It's like the worst it's ever been in terms of timing. And let's just hope that Marcus Freeman is around for, a significant amount of time, and
gotta hope so.
Success. Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta hope so, and hopefully he's around for a long time, because it's rare you find these types of coaches. It's just rare that you find somebody like this, and yeah, I think I'm not speaking out of line in suggesting that. Look, I hate saying it over and over, but I've been doing this a long time, and I've followed Notre Dame recruiting for 32 years professionally, and Notre Dame's never had this kind of success. And I mean, granted, the people that they have in place, the support staff, do a great job. But I think, truth be known, the reason a lot of these kids are coming here is because of Marcus Freeman. They want to play for Marcus Freeman. And when you have somebody like that, that's kind of a Pied Piper that can bring people in like that, it's very hard to replace. Clark Lee, I think, is a fantastic coach. There's no doubt about it. He's done a great job at Vandy. But does he have the kind of Pied Piper personality that a lot of people want to come play for him like they would Marcus Freeman? I'm not sure. And I don't think he enjoys recruiting as much as Marcus Freeman does. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't be successful. I mean, they just got the number one quarterback in the country to flip. So, they can do some things there too. And obviously they've done a good job of identifying lesser talent as far as the rankings go. And they've done a good job of identifying that and developing it. So it's a good system that they have put in place there. But again, I think it's very difficult to find somebody like Marcus Freeman. So again, hopefully he sticks around for a long, long time. Speaking of recruiting, Notre Dame, there's a guy announcing today, Xavier Hassan, a cornerback from North Carolina. Jamie, I watched this kid's junior film. I love this kid. I think he's a really good football player. They already have Ace Austin as a corner. This is Mike Mickens. This is what he does. He locks in on the guys he wants, and then he gets them in the boat early. If Hassan chooses Notre Dame, which I think we believe that he will, this is another really good pickup. And the thing I really like about him, this is kind of funny. When you watch his film, a lot of it is zone coverage and him making fantastic decisions in zone coverage. And that's been the thing that they've struggled with for a while. So it's nice to see that he has a really good understanding of where he's supposed to be in zone coverage, and really good athlete. I mean, this guy's a really good player. The interesting thing is, when you look at Ace Austin and Xavier Hassan, they're not the traditional 6'2" corner that Mickens looks for. They're a little bit more on the smaller side. Are you thinking nickel for these guys, or what do you think if they land Hassan?
Yeah, Alston I definitely see as a nickel. I think he's
too.
A nickel. Like, I think he's a perfect fit there. I really, really like him as a prospect. Yeah, and he's a guy, like you said, who's making a lot of plays in zone and really smart and just instinctive, great route recognition. Hassan, was at Irish Invasion, so got to see him then, and he is a really, really good man coverage corner too. Like he's absolutely like an elite athlete. And I think that's the thing, right? Even though he doesn't have, he's not Leonard Moore, right? He's not Leonard Moore in terms of like, the size and the measurables, like you said. But I just look at him and anytime you see a guy who's like, man, this guy just like competes through the catch point, like he's always doing that kind of extra and just has like the kind of the skill set and the competitiveness that you're looking for. That's why I just think like this, that I think Mike Mickens, I think that's a Mike Mickens corner. I think he's an outstanding prospect. Would be a massive addition for Notre Dame.
He really would be, and I really like where he's I love to watch this kid's film. He's really good, and man, you look at defensively, they got Khalil Terry, who I really like as a safety, ball hawk guy who just really understands, very physical, just great recognition for a safety. Then you add Ace Alston, who I really like, and of course we just mentioned Xavier Hassan. If he commits, you got McGaskin, the linebacker, Amari Irvin, the linebacker. Really like all of those guys. I think they're really, really talented players. And then Richie Flanagan. I mean, that's a pretty good start to a 2027 class. And there's some other big fish that are out there for sure. But I love where this thing is headed, man. I really love where this is headed. And even offensively, I know that they don't have a lot of commitment so far offensively. But I love James Halter. I love the way that kid plays. Very physical player. I love it. And of course, we know Teddy Gerard, but Teddy, may end up in the end enrolling early, and I hope that's the case. They could definitely use him early if that's the case. But so they'll probably have to go back and look for another quarterback, I would assume, in this 2027 class. But I really like where the 2027 class is headed right now. I think they're in really good shape. Clearly, they're in great shape with the tight end position right now. It's kind of they may have to turn people down in that situation. I think that they're in great shape with some good running backs. They got some good situations with some wide receivers. I'd like to see the board expanded there. I'm sure it will, but they got a pretty good shot at Monsoon Sales. Xavier Saab's another guy they got a good shot at. Julius Jones Jr., of course. Jameer Brown would be interesting to see what happens. Quentin Burrell. I really like what's going on with this recruiting class, and I think in the end, this one is going to be better than the one they signed in 2026 And boy, that's going to be so much
kind of crazy. That's kind of crazy.
It's going to. It really is, and this gets back to what I was talking about when it comes to the playoff committee and the rest of college football, and that's the next topic I want to talk about, which is I cannot believe the hate that Notre Dame has generated. And I mean, I really think the hate even leaked into the Heisman voting. I mean, I look at those numbers and I'm like, this just does not make sense. It just doesn't make sense. And I feel so bad for Jeremiah Love. Did he have the greatest numbers of running? He didn't have Marshall Faulk numbers or, some of these crazy numbers that we've seen running backs put up, even Genty last year. But there's no question he's a best player, best running back for sure. And I think the best player, but I just think that, as I mentioned last week, the hatred for Notre Dame right now is massive. I just, if you just listen to these people, it's just constant, especially on social media and things like this. It's going to be a situation where Notre Dame's just going to have to, put up the middle finger and say, you know what, we don't care what you think about us. We're just going to win the whole damn thing. And the best way to shut these people up, Jamie, is just to keep recruiting and win the whole damn thing. And Marcus Freeman has a great chance to do that next year. When you look at the schedule and the way things line up, it will be a surprise to me if Notre Dame doesn't end up 12-0. I'll be shocked if they don't, because I think they'll have the team to get there. Now, of course, you got to add some pieces, and we'll get to that in a minute. We'll talk about portal and what they're looking for, but I'm just really surprised. I mean, I knew that there was a lot of hatred for Notre Dame amongst the rest of college football, but just the pure volume of it and the intensity of it. And it's not just coming from the fans. I'm talking media too. It's really surprising. Your thoughts here?
I think a lot of the stuff from the media, Mike, is like, you can tell whose people's sources are.
Sure. Okay.
That is like, it's coming directly from coaches, ADs who are jealous.
Use the media, and using the media.
They use the media, and they are jealous of what Notre Dame, the power Notre Dame has, really, right? And there isn't a program, like other programs could go independent. Like if Alabama wanted to go independent, they could in a second, obviously, right? Like if Michigan could if they wanted to. Like there's 10 programs out there that could go independent at any second, right? But only one that is powerful, and that's the thing, right? And they just can't get over the fact that Notre Dame is able to get away with like how could they even be allowed in, even though they played 10 Power 4 conference opponents or anything like that. Like it's just, and there also too, there's like long-standing biases. Like I saw this guy mentioned Wilbon. Like, yeah, Michael Wilbon has not liked Notre Dame for years, decades, right?
Never.
And there's so many people like that, right? And it's funny that I think one of the things, and I know people wanted to hear from Marcus, and there are people who want to hear from Marcus. They want to hear him say, "Hey, I'm staying at Notre Dame." They want to hear that, but they also want to hear him be like the angry guy too. That you know, that Pete Pavakwa was, right? Like they want to see that part of it. But in a way, it's like he should never do that because he is the one thing that
people like.
And
Yeah.
he shouldn't do that because all of a sudden people are
Amen.
going to write that. And so
Yes.
it is best that he stays away from that and just
Agree
kind of lets
100%.
it be. And because the one thing that has made Notre Dame likable to people who even hate Notre Dame the last few years is Marcus Freeman. And the thing is that once you start playing again and once Marcus Freeman does stuff to like just be who he is and is the example, then all of a sudden that kind of stuff is going to wash away with a lot of those media people because they just can't hate. You can't hate on a guy like that.
I agree, and you're 100% right. I mean, Marcus Freeman's a very likable person, and so the best thing for Notre Dame to do is to just let him do what he does best, and that's just be Marcus Freeman. And I think the talk is done. I don't think Notre Dame needs to say anything. What they need to do, I mean, especially if they want to keep their independence, Jamie, win the whole damn thing. Then they can't say a damn thing, right? Go out, win the whole thing, because recruiting is going to continue. And it's going to, and so, you know, when I think about it, people keep saying, well, we're going to get pulled into a conference and we should go to a conference. And I'm all for Notre Dame trying to do what they want to do as far as stay independent for as long as it makes sense. Because I do think it's who Notre Dame is, and I think it's something that they should value and do this. And the only reason that Notre Dame is ever in trouble is when they miss the playoff, right? And so the only thing that they can control is by winning, right? And you continue to win. Now, the teams can battle and they can say, we're not going to schedule you. And that very well may happen. And that may very well cost Notre Dame. It's going to be interesting to see what happens as the new schedules start popping up, whether we continue to see the names Alabama, Auburn, Wisconsin, Texas, Ohio State, Michigan, whether we continue to see those names as being the bigger teams that are going to be announced on the schedule. If we don't, then there's something that people are going to, have to address at that point. But there's no point in addressing it at this point. Just go out, go 12-0, win the whole damn thing. And then you don't have to worry about anything. Recruiting is going to take over and it's just going to keep going and going. Now, of course, you lose Marcus Freeman, and then you got all kinds of problems you got to worry about replacing him, and can you continue that? But the best way for Notre Dame to answer their critics right now is keep their mouth shut, go out, recruit like crazy, and then go out and win the whole damn thing. And I think that there's a real good chance they can do that next year. Very excited to see if that's the case. And, can't wait to see the rest of recruiting and how it unfolds. Jamie, in order to do that, you're going to have fill some holes. And you're also going to have to keep your roster. And here's the thing that I don't think a lot of people think about, and that is, there was you can talk about whether you should accept the playoff or accept a bowl game and not accept a bowl game, right? And a lot of Irish fans have said, well, great, we didn't go to this bowl game, middle finger up to ESPN, blah, blah, blah. But what that did allow is it allowed a lot of people a lot of free time to talk to Marcus Freeman about possibly becoming their head coach. And it also allowed a lot of coaches and a lot of GMs and a lot of people to reach out to Notre Dame's players and call them and say, you know what, how much is Notre Dame giving you, by the way? Oh, really? Really? Oh, okay. Well, you know what? We'll give you more, right? Now, if you're constantly, like if Notre Dame were playing this Friday, their agents may be calling and they'll be like, you know what, shut up. Leave me alone. I'm trying to focus on the playoff, right? Leave me alone. Somebody wants Marcus Freeman to interview. He doesn't have time for that. Because he's in the middle of the playoff and he's like, leave me alone. I'm focused on what I need to focus on. Leave me alone. So by not going to that bowl game, you've opened yourself up for a lot of people to come knocking on the door to your head coach and your players. So Notre Dame has to be smart. This is very, very important because we know what happened last year. Rocco, Pat Coogan, Notre Dame has to make decisions. So guys like Emil Wagner, does it make sense to pay Emil Wagner? If he decides he doesn't want to go pro, does it make sense to pay him, $1 million, $1.5 million, whatever? I mean, we know that we heard Rocco got 1.2 million plus a bunch of crazy perks on top of that. So,
which is insane.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably $1.5 million for you when you put all the stuff together that Rocco got. When you talk about the place that he got to stay and all this kind of stuff, it's probably $1.5 million that it cost him. Does it make sense to pay Emil Wagner $1.5 million to come back, or do you say, you know what, we like Will Black, or we think Gerby Lambert can slide out there and we can put somebody else in Gerby's spot, or whatever the case may be? So you got to be smart about that, and all those conversations, right, that you would have had at the end of the playoff run about this NIL, you're having that conversation now, all right? And so you put together a number and it's X. Well, all you've did is give a whole time between now and the second to where you can go into the portal where people can sit and say, well, we'll match that number. We'll actually give you more. Matter of fact, we'll double that. And that conversation wouldn't have happened if they were in the playoff, and that conversation wouldn't have happened until way later. And also, teams that are trying to get the players right now, right, there's only so much money. So the players that are in the playoff, they're not going to get that because teams are trying to fill their rosters right now. All right. And it's the bird in the hand situation. Well, we can get this guy from Notre Dame. We kind of like this guy from Ohio State, and maybe he'll go into the portal, but we know this guy from Notre Dame will, and he'll do it for X amount of dollars. So a lot of people didn't think about that, but that is really the kind of the downside of not going to a bowl game and not being in the playoff. And I just have a feeling that's happening right now. I know how these agents work. I know a number of them, and this is what happens. So it's something that people didn't think about. It's probably going to cost Notre Dame more in having to pay for these guys than if they would have made it to the playoff or played in a bowl. So it is what it is, but that's just kind of the reality of it. Your thoughts here?
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we've talked about the entire year is like kind of like the depth of the roster. And the thing is when you have a deep roster, not everyone can afford to get paid. And that's just what it is, right? Like not everyone can get paid. And you have guys who are maybe not starters, but are starting caliber. And you have to decide whether or not like that's the guy who out of these guys are you paying as the starter? And and sometimes too, maybe you say, well, this guy's too good, but maybe we're overloading this position, but we want to keep this guy. Well, then maybe you got to pay another position less. And there's all these kind of things that kind of go on with it. And then obviously that doesn't even get into the whole thing of, there's the cap that is supposed to be in place, but doesn't really seem to be in place for a lot of schools and how they've approached it too. And that Notre Dame isn't going to be, cutting corners the way that a lot of other schools are. And that is another thing to think about too, right? So I think that it's one of these situations where very similar to last year, like you said, with Coogan and Spindler, there's going to be guys that are good players for Notre Dame that will not be on the team next year because they're going to go somewhere else, whether it's money, whether it's opportunity, whatever. And you can't really blame them for that, but you're going to kind of have a good idea of like who Notre Dame really values and who they really value the most. And it's one of those things like in hindsight, people could say, well, the Charles Juggesaw injury, like first of all, no one could see that coming or whatever, that specific thing was going to happen. But it's just last year, I thought Notre Dame kept more guys than I thought they would be able to.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be the thing. I was like, we're going to go into, technically the portal opens up January 2nd. closes January 16th. We're going to see over the next, month, really, because it's December 15th right now. Are they going to keep more guys than we think like they did last year? Or is it going to be, well, this was the year that they kind of got hit a little bit more. And it probably could be, based on what you mentioned, like that, them having more time to really do it, because I bet all those guys wouldn't have stayed if they didn't go on that run last year, because they didn't have the time to get poached like some of these other, some of these guys might this year.
I'll tell you too, and this is why I get so fired up about O-line and D-line recruiting. Okay, so let's say we're in the portal this year, right? If you're the rest of college football, you look at it and you say, okay, Tennessee stole Sam Pendleton from Notre Dame. Big time starter, played the whole year, great player, did really well. Indiana stole Coogan. I mean, he's probably the best offensive lineman they have on their team right now. I mean, certainly just playing out, lights out. Rocco did a great job for Nebraska. So, and guess what? They all stayed healthy and all that type of stuff. So if I'm looking around the rest of college football, I'm like, man, where can I go get an offensive lineman that I know is well coached, probably has the talent to start here, but just isn't playing? And I think of guys like Sullivan Absher. I think of guys like Joel Otting, and guys who played a lot, but will they have a starting spot next year? And so this is you play your 6th, 7th, and 8th guy. What you're doing is you're opening yourself up for somebody to be poached, because if they play well enough and they look okay on film, and they're like, man, they just need a few more reps. Look what happened when they took these guys. This is the situation where I'd say it's very important that you have to recruit very well at O-line, D-line, because those are positions that people are always going to need and try and steal guys. And so it's so important to make sure that you continue every single year to get some elite linemen, because otherwise you're really going to struggle. And your depth is going to be completely wiped out. And I think Sullivan, I'm sure, likes Notre Dame. I think he'd probably, if he'd had his choice, he would certainly rather stay than go. But you know what? If somebody's going to give him $1 million too, out the door. Same thing with Joel.
I doubt he's going to get that, because he doesn't have the experience that
and he doesn't.
Spindler does.
But what will he get? And I don't know. And and with Otting too, obviously he's probably a little longer in the program, so he may have a better. Or actually, is he the same year as?
They're in the same. They're both the same.
Okay, they were the same class. Okay, so then when you talk about the graduation part of things, they're both kind of in the same boat. Could potentially graduate at the end of May, I suppose.
That also, it's a very big question with a lot of those guys.
They want the degree,
One of the things, cause this is why too, where I get it with the January portal. You only have the one portal. And I guess I believe that grad transfers can still go in at any time. So I think it's not an open window, but like if you want to go in the spring, you can. But how about these guys who are trying to graduate in the spring, and then like, don't you want those guys? Those guys should be able to finish. They should be able to finish and get their Notre Dame degree or whatever degree from another program, and then go in if they want to. I think that's why I do like the idea of like them only having to worry about one window, but to not have those guys, like just imagine Steve Angeli couldn't transfer after last spring. Like that would have been a shame. That would have been stupid. So I hope you don't see less of that kind of thing where it's like, well, he's got to get out because and he's like half a semester, or he's a semester away from his degree. Like that would suck.
And that is kind of the bad thing about it, because it did work out really well for Angeli, and who knows whether that would have happened if he would have stuck around. And I don't know. It's a tough situation that they're in. A lot of people want to know, okay, who do you think they're going to get in the portal? It's impossible to know. I mean, it really is. And the reason why is we don't know who's coming back on the current roster, right? Is Billy Schrouth coming back? Is Emil Wagner coming back? Well, is Drake Bowen coming back? Is, can Jason Onye get a waiver? We don't know the answer to this. So, we believe that Notre Dame will be looking for 2 interior defensive tackles. If Onye is back, they probably only need 1, but I'd still take 2 if you can get them. I really would. It just depends on, what types of players you're looking for. But, we talked about it last week. We think probably 2 interior defensive tackles are needed, probably a boundary receiver, maybe a nickel corner, certainly a backup quarterback. We believe that will be the situation. I mean, I think you have to take a kicker. There's just no way. I mean,
yeah.
It's just, I don't know whether that means you go to Eric Schmidt and say, sorry, we got to be more sure. I don't know, but these are the types of conversations that are happening right now with Mike Mickens and Pat Garrity. They're all sitting down having these conversations, but until we kind of know that, it's hard to know who's going to be there, and it's hard to know. People are always asking us, well, does Aeneas Williams stick? Will he still be back? Well, I think if you asked Aeneas Williams whether he wants to be back, the answer is absolutely. What we don't know is, what is somebody going to offer him to go? And I don't know the answer to that. So, if somebody offers him $1 million, he's not going to get that from Notre Dame. No back is going to get that from Notre Dame unless it's Price or Jeremiah Love, and I'd be surprised if either of those guys are back. But somebody could give Aeneas Williams. They need a running back. They think he's a guy who he clearly can play all 3 downs, which is a huge plus. If you got a guy who can play all 3 downs, that's a big plus, and you're willing to pay a little bit more for that. So it's just hard to say. And everybody's like, well, what about this guy? What about that guy? And it's like, I don't know. There's going to be hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people in the portal. And it gets frustrating for the staff, because I know Matt just grumbles every time. Hey, Matt, what about this guy? Or, hey, Jamie, what about this guy? It's like, well, yeah, he plays, we've seen the defensive tackle from Wake Forest. And people said, oh, well, what about this guy? And it's like, yeah, I suppose he'd be all right, but, is Notre Dame really interested in him? I don't know. And so it's just tough. I know people want answers for all these things, but it's just really difficult to say, yes, this is a guy they're going to go after, or no, this is a guy they're going to go after, until we actually know. Your thoughts, Jamie?
Yes, and the previous general manager talked a lot more than Mike Martin.
Amen about that.
Yes, he talked a lot more. So there was more of an idea in terms of, the media had a better idea of, hey, this is what is happening. And there's a lot more stuff that isn't known because they don't want to know. And that's fair, right? But that's just what it is, right?
What's going to happen is most of the news that leaks about the portal is going to come from either the kid's agent, or it's going to come from the school that's losing him. All right. That's where the news is going to come from. So it's going to be the school that's losing him is going to say, oh yeah, I heard he's gone, and heard it's, Notre Dame, or heard it's because they don't care. They'll release that, that information will get out there, but nobody wants to talk about who they're getting until right before it happens. And so a lot of people that are looking for this stuff, that's where the news is going to leak. It's going to come from their agents, and it's going to come from the team that's losing them. And so people expecting us as a media source to get a bunch of information from Notre Dame, that's going to be difficult, probably more difficult than last year. So,
and I would say too, it's such a fluid situation where I think one of the things, like you said about Aeneas, right? Like Aeneas Williams, if he had his choice, he would prefer to stay at Notre Dame, I'm sure.
Amen. Yeah.
But the thing is that it comes down to, it's a fluid situation, because what Notre Dame might offer him could change in a couple days, and what someone else offers them could change in a couple days, right? Like all of these things, it's all very fluid, which is pretty bad. That's bad for everyone in college football. Like, I don't think that's a good thing to happen, but I think that's just the reality of it, where everyone's asking, well, is this guy going to stay in school or is this guy? No. The truth is, if we knew, we would say, like,
Sure.
don't worry about this or whatever. But the thing is that I think there's numerous cases last year, Mike, where guys who were key players, huge players for Notre Dame this year, we had heard a couple weeks before, the portal was going to open, or before the end of the season, or during last season, that, yeah, this guy's not going to be around next year. Like, a bunch of guys, like, good, really good players. And we were like, well, that's not good.
Yeah.
And those guys stayed and they got paid and blah, blah, blah. Like, so that's why too, it's always a bad look. And this is what I always do, why I say, like, Mike, obviously Matt Freeman, Christian, they're not running and throwing up rumors on our site. That doesn't happen at ISD. And it does happen sometimes at some of these other sites. I'm not saying it happens too frequently, but it does happen. And sometimes they look bad because things change. And you don't want to be hinting at that kind of stuff. That's why, and I understand everybody's got an appetite, wants to know. Like, heck, we want to know what the definitive answer is. Everyone wants to know because it helps us in planning for. I can't write anything about, like, what's this next season is going to look like roster-wise or what portal needs are, because I don't know if this guy's going to be back or that, right? So that changes what we could do for content. But the reality is, if we go and rush and say, oh, no, this guy's going to be back when we don't know, that could, first of all, make us lose credibility, but also, like, will be bad for if we wrote something and we got to plan and we got to change content, we got to do all this kind of stuff. So everyone wants to know all these answers. The truth is that, like, this time during this period of, like, the next, couple weeks is when we're going to find out about who we know is going to stay and who's not.
Perfect example of that. Notre Dame has obviously asked Billy Schrauth, they'd like for him to come back, right? Billy's going to have a big number if he comes back, right?
Yes.
It's going to be a big number. So if Billy doesn't come back, all of a sudden the money you were going to pay Billy, now you can go pay somebody else. And so this is the fluid part of the situation, is because, all right, well, we were going to pay Billy $1 million, maybe. I don't know. I have no clue. I doubt it's that much, but you never know. We were going to pay Billy $1 million. He says no. Now we got $1 million to play and play with somebody else. And here's the other thing that people don't need to understand. We know just from talking to some people, like one kind of key player that we know of in Notre Dame's situation that could do a number of things. Heard he asked for a big number, crazy number. Well, Notre Dame's probably not going to pay that number, right? But they had a number that they were going to pay that's probably pretty high. And, whether or not they can come to some sort of agreement somewhere in the middle, or he just takes whatever Notre Dame gives him, I don't know. But the problem you're going to run into is, until you have these kind of big fish figured out, you don't know what you can go get in the portal. You don't know. So Notre Dame has to figure out what their current situation is with all these players before they can go out and start offering money to these portal guys. And so guys like Billy Schrauth have to make a decision. They have to make a decision on Emil Wagner. They have to figure out, is Drake Bowen going? Well, what is Boubacar Traore going to do? What is, Adon Schuler going to do? What is Jason Onya going to come back? And if he is, we're going to have a big, pretty big number for him. So all these decisions have to be made before you can really go and say, okay, well, here's how much we now have for the portal. And here's the other thing, Jamie. I've been thinking about this all weekend, and it goes back to Pete Bavacqua's talk in the press conference where he's like, well, we don't think the 22 million is enough. And he kept talking about that. And I think the reason he's talking about that is because he knows the rest of college football, what they're going to do. And they're going to put out all these crazy NIL to all these different people. And it's going to be a major logjam at the NCAA, because that clearinghouse is going to be flooded. Some guys could have up to 50 NIL deals. A big star like, say, CJ Clark, or CJ Carr, he could have 50 different NIL deals outside of what Notre Dame pays him. And then the clearinghouse is going to have to look at all 50 of those deals and say, okay, Gillette Razors wants to give him this much. Well, that's crazy. He shouldn't get that much. Well, who the hell are you to decide that? Right? I mean, a person's value is what somebody's willing to pay him. And that's just the reality. And that's why they're going to lose constantly. They are going to get sued. Unbelievable. And they're going to just fold. And see, here's the thing that I'm concerned about. Notre Dame, just like NIL to start, they always start with, oh, no, we don't want to do anything crazy. We don't want to do anything crazy. We're going to stay within the rules. The rest of college football, straight up the air. We don't care about the rules. You're going to have to force us to follow the rules. And we think that your craziness of this clearinghouse trying to dictate to us what this guy's value is BS. And guess what? Take it to court. Take it to court, because a guy's value is what somebody's willing to pay him. So if, say, Phil Knight wants to pay more, the quarterback, $50 million to sign one piece of whatever, who's to say that they can't do that? I mean, it seems ridiculous that he signs one piece of paper, but maybe Phil Knight wanted that autograph, and so he pays him $50 million for it. I mean, that seems ridiculous, but Phil Knight has the money. He has the money to do that. Are you going to tell Phil Knight he can't spend $50 million on what he wants? I mean, you got all these billionaires with massive yachts and all this type of stuff, and now all of a sudden you're saying you can't do that. So this thing's going to get challenged constantly, and the smart teams are going to be the Alabamas, the Georgias, the Texas. They're going to push this crazy. They're just like, I mean, can you imagine being the first day in that clearinghouse? There's going to be so many NIL deals sitting there. They're going to have to sift through that, and who knows when they'll be able to make decisions on all this kind of stuff. I mean, do they even have the people hired to do that? Think of how many people. There are 170,000 Division I athletes right now. 171,000 or 70,000. And not all of them are going to have NIL deals out of this, but a lot of them will. I mean, think of the women's, stars. A lot of those women make a lot of money, because they have the social media following or whatever. And how do you say, okay, some, clothing line wants to give this pretty athlete a bunch of money because they think they're going to sell her clothes. I mean, how do you dictate what is value and what isn't value, and what is worth something and what it isn't? And so imagine this, Jamie. I know this is going to be crazy. I'm worried about this. Can you believe that? I am actually worried about this. So it is what it is. I just know what teams are going to do. And Notre Dame traditionally, when it comes to these things, they don't embrace it. They're like, you know what? No, we're not going to get involved in that. That's illegal, blah, blah, blah. Everybody else does it. They wait 2 years and realize nobody else is getting a penalty for it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's what concerns me. So, you're going to fall behind because of this. Go ahead.
I mean, I agree with you that is typically how it's been done. But I will say, under Marcus Freeman, it has seen that they have been, I mean, I don't want to say they're not at the forefront. They're not the first to do it. Definitely. Never. That's not Notre Dame. But they react much quicker. So
they didn't in NIL. It took them 2 years.
It took them 2 years, but that, honestly, I don't even think that would have ever happened. Like, I think that is.
You didn't have any choice.
And the thing is that right now, Marcus Freeman, as basically as Pete Bavacqua said, he's got like a fluid contract that they're going to just keep giving him more money as much as whatever. He basically has anything that if he really, really wants it, he can go in and just be like, we got to do this. And so, and I'm not saying he's
faith in that than I do. I'll say that.
I'll just say that I think that
I'll say they are crazy if they don't do it your way. They're 100% crazy if they don't do it your way.
I think that the thing is that he's not going to push it like past the limit, but he will push it to the limit. And I think that's the thing. And that is, as much as he's a good coach and all that, that is why you need someone like him there.
Amen.
Right? Because you need someone to do that at Notre Dame, or else they'll just always be stuck behind. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the thing. And I just hope that they're smart enough to realize that. And again, probably 32 years of just the same ridiculous decisions over and over and over, and then they bend, and then they bend, and then they bend, and then they bend, and and it's just like, why don't you just embrace what it is, right? Because you're going to end up doing it anyway, and it's just over and over and over. That's their process. And so I hope you're 100% right. And the reason I bring it up, Jamie, is because if you don't do these things, guess what? That's going to be the one thing that pushes your coach out the door. He's going to be like, you know what? I can't win here. Not only do I got the rest of college football against me and trying to keep me out of the playoffs, the people who hire me aren't giving me what I need. right? And again, please don't take my comments as I know something about it. I don't. I'm just being honest. I don't know how they're going to approach this. I'm just speaking from my past experience of how Notre Dame has reacted in the past and with this NIL stuff. And it is what it is. So I hope that I'm wrong and that they are very aggressive in this, because they're going to need to be. All these other teams have embrace this. They're going to go crazy. They're going to go gangbusters, and just watch. That's the way it's going to be. And it'll impact how many you can keep and who you can keep on your roster and who you can attract as well. So we just got to hope that that's the case. All right. We're going to move into some questions from ISD customers. We got quite a bit. Dave S says, is there any chance that ND can get a bye if 12-0 next season? Yeah. There's definitely a chance to get a bye. So, let's see. Does the team make any adjustments to the offseason program to maximize their extra off-season time? I mean, I don't know what more you can do. I mean, I think what they've done is they just said, look, go home, spend some time with your family. I mean, obviously they have their finals, and then go spend time with your family. And then when you come back, you'll be ready, mentally to attack this 100%. I just think that it was a nice needed break for everybody. Again, there were some negatives and positives that we just discussed about taking that break. But you just got to hope your culture's strong and that they do that. But I don't see them really changing anything. What I hope happens, and I think because the teams are starting to choose not to attend these bowls, is I think that my suggestion for the teams that get left out of the playoff that don't want to participate in this, the NCAA should say, look, if you're not going to participate in the bowl, that's fine. Everybody else gets all this practice. You don't. For teams not participating in the bowl, we'll give you 12 practices, but it's all got to be fundamental work. All right. You can do 7-on-7. You can do all those things, but there is no hitting. There's no tackling to the ground. It's all kind of shells. It's more working on fundamentals. And I think if the NCAA did that, very positive thing for the rest of college football. Your thoughts on that real quick, Jamie?
Yeah, I mean, I would love that. Also, I just think it's kind of stupid that, like, if you finish 2-10, those teams need practice more than anybody. Like, why are they getting punished for the lack of not making a bowl? Like, they need to develop as much as anyone. So, and I think having like non-padded practices or something like that would be a good thing. I will say, like, last year, it was so different because that was so long and there were so many guys playing hurt throughout the college football playoff. And obviously, like, spring ball was so different because of it, and winter conditioning was so different because of it. And now you're going to see guys with more of a a full year. So someone like Anthony Knapp didn't have close to a full year of a thing, even though he was only a freshman. So I think you could see like bigger gains in terms of all that kind of stuff, where guys are going to come in January, and that it's going to be a different approach for a guy like that and some of these other guys, which I think will be
that's a good
really,
point,
really good.
because those guys, when they got back, it was about recovery, right? It wasn't about building strength at that point. And so that's a very good point. Glad you pointed that out. Where when they first come in, they'll be able to just turn it on full jets. And before, it's all like, all right, we got to figure out how to mend all these crazy injuries that have been lingering. Because every one of them, Jamie, you know what it's like. And you didn't play, 16 games or 15 or whatever these guys played. There's not a guy who gets done with the season that isn't hurting somewhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even if you're not, even if you're still playing, you're hurting probably multiple three places, where you're just like trying to make it through. So I do think that's a very good point. Glad you mentioned that. I mean, again, questions about who do you anticipate will be back? I get it. I know. We'll go through this and I'll tell you why it's hard to say. So like Aeneas Williams, we just talked about it. What's somebody going to offer him? I think if it were up to him, he'd probably be back. Same thing with Greathouse. I mean, I think he's got a great opportunity. He's got one of the best quarterbacks in the country throwing to him. Will Pauling won't be around. Because of his injury, he hasn't shown that he's healthy again. He's probably not going to have a great market out there. But he may be upset that all of a sudden he wasn't allowed to play or didn't get as much the ball. So who knows? Same thing with Wagner and Strouth. We don't know what's going to happen there. Onye, who knows? That waiver could take forever. Traore, again, it's just it's hard to know at this point. And until some of these guys get closer to that decision, it's hard to believe. A guy wants to know when spring practices start and end. Again, they haven't really, they don't release that until really a couple weeks before it actually does. But it's usually March and then sometime in April. So choose two guys on each side of the ball that are entering into make or break offseason. Oh, that's a good question. Boy, there's a lot of them. I mean, Jamie, there's a lot of guys that are in kind of make or break, but we don't even know if they'll be here. I think you'll be surprised. There'll be some guys that, probably maybe even some freshmen that came in last year that aren't around, because with the way this thing is set up today, you got to make a decision on guys pretty early, right? Yeah. And if you don't think that they can play here, they're out the door. So again, I don't mean to single out a guy like Eric Schmidt who had his struggles, but if you don't feel confident that he's your guy, then you got to go get another kicker. And Eric Schmidt will probably have to find another situation for him. Sometimes they will keep two kickers, but two scholarships is two scholarships, and each one has to come with some sort of money. So you got to make that decision. So I don't know. Can you think of a couple on each side of the ball that you think are kind of make or break?
Yeah, I always think guys that are going into like technically their third year, like they've been on campus they've had 2 seasons. Yeah. And I mean, Cam Williams is 100%. Like, this is like, it's now or never kind of. That's, you're going to just see less and less of, there's that, the Javon McKinley where he stuck around for 4 years. And then in the 5th year, all of a sudden he became a starter and had a good season. That just not going to happen anymore. Like, that's just not going to happen. That guy will be gone by now in today's day and age. Right. So it's huge for him. Like, it's kind of now, or he'll just get passed. And that's the thing. So him, and I would say like Jack Larson is another guy, because you got James Flanagan, You have two really talented tight ends coming in this class. And the thing is that you got Cooper Flanagan coming back from injury. And if you got to play at Notre Dame, it's got to be kind of, he has to make this jump now. Ty Washington's probably going to be back too. Like, it's a crowded field. And it's like, if you're ever going to play, now's the time. So it's just one of those things where it's hard to kind of, just say like, well, it's not fair. He has barely played. He doesn't have that much time. There's too much talent there. So you have to do something. So I think it's a super important, year for him. On defense, I would say guys like Teddy Rizak and Bodie Cahoon. I think both those guys, like if you look at like linebackers, those guys, Teddy is further along than Bodie. Like he is closer to playing than him. But you look at, well, are those guys, so are Bowen and Osbury coming back? I mean, Snead, I just have a hard time believing that he will come back, but I don't know, right? And then you got KVA, and you obviously have KVA. You have Madden. So it's still going to be kind of a crowded field there, and it's like you got to make your move, right? And
there's a lot.
Yeah. So I think like
there's
those
a lot
guys,
of guys in that room. I mean, you look at it, wide receiver. Yeah, sure. Even wide receiver. I mean, you mentioned Cam Williams, but then you've got Sadate, Mike Gilbert, KK Smith. Those are guys that they got to make a move. And you mentioned Larson and a guy like Devin Houston who came in as an offensive or defensive lineman. Now he's at offensive line. Does he want to be there? We've already mentioned Absher, Notting, what happens with them, but a lot of guys that have, Peter Jones, is he ever going to play? I don't know. Preston Zinter is another guy that, and Brennan Vernon, those are some guys that are kind of on the fence. Are they ever going to play? And if not, are they pushed out? I don't know. I think Osbury will be back. I'd be surprised if Kahanukia is, because I do think that he's got a lot of potential. He just has been injured. So, but a guy like Ben Minnick, what's his situation? Or a guy like Tabor and Benny Powell, because, I mean, let's be honest, they got some crazy safety talent coming in.
Loaded.
So,
yeah,
they really are. So these are guys that'll be, and those are questions, not only for Notre Dame to make the decision, but also those players themselves. Do I see an opportunity here? They may just say, I need to move on. So, a lot of people want to know the best guess on a linebacker coach. I at this point, I think they're probably not even. I'm sure that they've reached out to a few people to kind of feel some things out, but right now, I gotta believe that it's all Porter at this point, Jamie. I mean, I gotta believe that they're just completely focused on their roster and then Portal. I do think that they'll do some interviews with some linebacker coaches at some point here soon, but if I'm Marcus Freeman, I'm focused on that right now, because that's the most important, making sure you keep the players that you want, and then also go out there and find some other guys. Still, I just think it's a little too early for the linebacker guesses at this point. Guy wants to know, is this talk about freezing Indy out real, or is it just posturing by the ADs to mollify their mouth-breathing fans? What do you think there, JB? Do you think that the teams would do that?
I think a lot of people said they're going to freeze Notre Dame out, are the teams that Notre Dame aren't really interested in playing anyways. The entire Big 12. Mm-hmm. When is the last time Notre Dame has scheduled any of the teams that are in the Big 12?
Yeah.
Zero. Like, they don't play those teams. Like, those aren't teams that Notre Dame plays or would have interest in playing, other than BYU is like the only team. And guess what? As much as like BYU maybe like would be offended by like all the kind of stuff with like, well, why are we getting included and all this in the conversation? BYU is going to play Notre Dame if Notre Dame wants to play them. That, like, they're not going to turn that down. And these schools in the SEC, it's like, I'm sure there's probably some SEC ADs there too. The ones who like money, they're going to take that deal, right? The ACC schools with smart ADs, they all want to play Notre Dame. They know exactly what Pete Bavacqua said in terms of, well, we sell out these games that, when Notre Dame comes to town. And 60% of our revenue is based off of television ratings. Well, when we play Notre Dame, we get a higher rating. They know that stuff. So that's not the kind of thing where if you're just like, say, random NC State, which does have a, Notre Dame alum as a AD. So that's one thing. Like, that guy's probably not going to want to freeze out Notre Dame, but that person understands how much the value comes with playing Notre Dame. I just think it's probably like a bunch of like Big Ten teams that Notre Dame would never play. Like Purdue, it's valuable for Notre Dame to play at Purdue. Like, I don't think those teams are ever going to freeze Notre Dame out. Like, I just don't see it ever becoming like a total boycott thing, because anyone, when it comes to money, they just they fold.
I think the question is, are the top teams that Notre Dame needs to have on their schedule to have credibility, will they continue to? And that's the interesting thing. We've seen Steve Sarkisian saying, look, why even bother with this? If we're only going to get penalized and we don't get any benefit of scheduling these tough games out of conference, what's the point of it? So that's the question, I think, is, will Texas, will Alabama, will Penn State, will Michigan, the teams that are going to give Notre Dame the out of conference credibility. Here's the thing. What's hurt Notre Dame more than anything, and this is the funny thing the ACC doesn't understand, what's hurt Notre Dame more than anything is they have to play 5 crap ACC teams. That's hurt their schedule. All right. You can say all you want about, but hey, Navy's 11-2 or whatever they ended up with, right? They're a ranked team. What hurt Notre Dame's schedule wasn't Navy. It was all these, Syracuse and all these crap teams that Notre Dame had to play from the ACC. And that's the reality of it. So the problem is I don't anticipate those ACC teams getting any better. Matter of fact, I think a lot of them are going to get worse, because I just don't think that the ACC is going to be around. And if it is, it's not going to be very strong. Which ACC team is trending up? I mean, Miami's just up and down. It certainly ain't Florida State or Clemson. Those teams aren't trending up at this point. So where is the great other ACC team? The only good and consistent winner in the ACC is Notre Dame. Everybody else has been highly inconsistent, and that's the truth to the matter. All right. I know you got to get going, so you got to go pick up your son here, but let's get one more question. Let's see. I know Freeman isn't leaving for the NFL this year, so this is a hypothetical question. Freeman leaves for the NFL in 1 month. All the good candidates are gone. Would you promote Mike Mickens to head coach or somebody else on the staff? I don't think I wouldn't. Well, I mean, I think it depends on who's available. I don't know if Mike Mickens would be the choice. I think obviously Ash or Denbrock would be a safer choice because they've been coordinators for a while. And again, I don't think that Mickens is a bad coach, but I would have a real hard time naming a position coach as the head coach at Notre Dame. I just would have a real hard time doing that. I think they'd have to look outside. Any thoughts from you, Jamie?
I don't think there's anybody on the staff that would be choice to promote. I think they would have to look, externally, and I don't know. Maybe they are able to draw in somebody who wasn't be able to draw in from some of these other programs. Maybe they're, because the other thing is that if you can keep the class that they just signed, who wouldn't want to sign up for, where Notre Dame's at right now, right? If you consider that class. So that would be pretty attractive for a lot of coaches to come into, although I don't know if they'd be able to keep everybody, right? But yeah, you'd have to look externally. I'd imagine, even though, I mean, I don't think like it's the perfect thing. Tommy Rees would get a lot of consideration
He would.
for it.
He would.
Yeah.
He certainly would. He certainly would. And would that be good? I don't know if it's hard to say. It's just hard to say. I think that
Totally
Reese
unproven,
doesn't get the Reese does not get the credit he deserves as an offensive coordinator. I think he's a good offensive coordinator. Is he a great one? I don't know. We never got to see him really do it with great talent is the thing, So, Mike Denbrock looks really good when he has a Jaden Daniels, and he looks pretty good because he's had a couple pretty good quarterbacks to follow up with Jaden Daniels. But, Tom and Reese never really had a lot of those types of players, and not just that. They didn't have a Jeremiah Love and a Jadarian Price, and so there's. I don't know what the answer to that would be, whether that would be a good decision or not. It may end up being the only decision they have at that point too. You just never know. So, all right. That's. I got one more question. Do you got time for one more, Jamie?
Yeah, I got time for.
Or do you got to go?
No, I got one more.
All right. All right. So, where was this? I saw it. It looked like a good question. I missed it here. Oh, here's an interesting thing, and I have a point about it. A guy wants to know, now that the season's over, what the heck was Chris Ash doing for the first 2.5 games of the year? Why did he try to fix what was not broken as he got things underway? So frustrating those first 2 games, and his scheme, the difference between that and the playoffs and not. And yeah, I mean, I think that that's true. It is frustrating. But I think if you go back to a lot of the defensive coordinators when they first took over, it wasn't pretty to begin with. It just wasn't pretty. So I don't think you blame everything on Chris Ash. It just sometimes it takes a while for him to understand the talent that's there. And sometimes it takes time for the talent to buy into what you're doing. And, if you're used to hearing things a certain way and you completely change it, and again, it wasn't completely changed, but they were doing a lot different things. There was also different personnel playing at the beginning of the year than there was later in the year. So I think all those things factor into it. But here's the question that I think this question is important. Why I think this question is important. Do you think Brian Kelly, man, I'm getting old. Do you think Marcus Freeman learned anything from this experience? Because it has been my opinion that after the Miami game and you saw how things were going, that a head coach needs to step in at that point, especially when you look at the rest of the schedule, the rest of the season. You know that if you drop the first 2 games, you're in trouble. But there's also the unwritten rule that when you hire a guy, you let him do his job until it's to the point where it's obvious that he's failing, and then you step in as a leader and fix it. But then you also have the responsibility to your team to getting to the playoff and doing all these things. So I think the real question is on that question is, do you think Marcus Freeman learned anything by that experience? What do you think?
I think he definitely learned from it. He's just someone who's been good at like adapting to the circumstances that he's had. And I think that there's no way that you could go through that process and not see like, wow, we got to reevaluate like how we're even evaluating your personnel. And it's something that, Greg and I have talked about on Hidden Hustle a lot too. Like it not just like the stuff with Chris Ash, but like the stuff with Ash. And I know Mike Mickens, obviously everybody knows he's a great coach, certainly a great recruiter. It's not like anyone wants to fire him or is calling to fire him or whatever. He's part of them not playing Tay Johnson during that time and saying like, okay, he's not ready yet. And not like playing the guy with upside. And then it also when Devontae Smith obviously was hurt but then saying, well, Carson Hobbs is there and we feel good about it. They didn't have a backup plan. Like they needed, I mean, I guess Carson Hobbs was the backup plan, but they didn't have a backup plan to the backup plan. And that really
cost
them. It cost
in both
them.
Games.
And you can say, oh, yeah, there's all these other little things that you can pick out and say like, You know, Mark Zachary being thrown into the game and these situations stuff too. And it's like, well, you didn't get those guys ready enough. And maybe you should have had, or maybe it comes down to like even saying like the general manager, and not putting this on Mike Martin or anything, but it comes down to saying, we can't rely on having a true freshman in the portal. We need to get another corner in the portal to have somebody ready there just in case. Like, so all of these different things, I think you have to look at it that way. You have to look at it that way. And if they're not looking at it that way, and Marcus Freeman and the entire staff didn't learn from that, then you're just doomed to repeat the same thing. And it could happen again. Right. So I think there's a lot of different things that I think, in a way, having those experiences, I mean, it's not a good thing that Notre Dame's not in the playoff, all of that kind of stuff. And obviously you hope that you learn things when you win rather than when you lose. But I think that should be a lesson to everyone involved that they mishandled that and it ultimately cost them.
Yeah. And I think that's why we're saying they need to look for a nickel. And I think Dallas Golden probably going to be the starter and be the guy, but Dallas Golden can get hurt tomorrow, right? You got to have somebody who's there. And so these are the things that you have to learn. But again, it also comes down to, can you afford to get a nickel corner? Because they're not cheap. Everybody else is looking for them for the same situation. So can you pay a nickel corner to come in and be a backup? I mean, they're not going to be happy with that situation. Now, of course, Dallas Golden hadn't won the job, so you can say, well, look, you're going to compete, but a lot of these guys want to know they're going to start. So it's a tough situation, and this is the problem that you're going to run into. And people keep saying, well, why would you go to the NFL? Well, the reason a head coach will go to the NFL is they don't have to deal with this, right? There are contracts that last longer than 1 year in the NFL. So you sign a guy, you get him for 4 years. You don't have to renew it every single year. These are the frustrations and headaches that head coaches have that end up costing you a chance for a national championship. And so I hope that he learned, and I think he probably did. And I think it's one of those things that these are, when you're a first-year head coach or first-time head coach, these are the lessons you have to learn. And I don't blame Marcus Freeman for saying, hey, we bring a guy in here. We think he's a good quality coach. We got to let him show what he can do. And guess what? When he figured it out, he was as good as golden. I mean, he really was. The way they played down the stretch, I mean, man,
yeah,
they absolutely destroyed Stanford. I mean, they could do literally nothing. I mean, absolutely nothing. And so, it worked out, but it did cost you. And so these are the things that, I think a head coach has to learn. All right. Once again, folks, I wanted to mention a great time to sign up for Irish Sports Daily. Go to the front page, click on the premium section. Also, if you want to check out opportunities to advertise on the podcast, you can hit me up at mikefrank18@gmail.com. That's going to be it for the show, folks. Hope you enjoyed that. We will talk to you next week, hopefully with a lot more stuff to talk about when it comes to portal and guys returning and all that type of stuff. Hopefully we'll have some more news on that, and it'll all be good news. Wouldn't that be nice? Thanks for listening. We will talk to you next week on Power Hour.